some of you may have heard Semona before. A warm welcome, Semona. Thank you for your time and thank you for being so willing to share with us your journey. And today's topic is the journey of self-love. I know Semona has been working on herself, and with this topic and tools and gifts that she would be able to share with us towards the journey towards self-love. And a little about Semona. She is a lecturer at the University of Johannesburg in the Department of Marketing Management. She's also in the process of completing a PhD in online consumer behavior. Semona has been meditating for 6 years, and she has been a member of the Brahma Kumaris since 2018. So warm welcome. Maybe to start off with a little bit of sharing of the PhD in online consumer behavior, a little bit of that, and then we will start our program. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Sister Shirley, and good morning to everyone. So my topic initially, what I had been interested in was the socio-economic issues that we face as a country. And one of the biggest socio-economic issues is access to the internet. And for me, that was an interesting topic to undertake, to try and study how consumers make their purchase decisions online with respect to their access to data or their access to the internet. And so through my research, I had found that there had been a number of studies that were done in your developed markets like the US and Europe, where they have already models to show the different stages that consumers go through when shopping online. But in an emerging market context like South Africa, those models would not hold true, partially because of the socio-economic conditions we face, which are different to what are faced in developed markets. So I'm in my third year and hoping to graduate next year. So yeah, that's about my PhD.
Okay, thank you. And I know you're working on yourself very much, and at the moment working towards the journey of self-love. So just to let us know, what does self-love mean to you, firstly?
Okay, I think each of us will have a different definition, but through my journey, what I've discovered is self-love is really about self-compassion, self-respect, and being patient and kind to yourself. I had come from a background where I myself was very hard on myself. I was critical, I was very judgmental towards myself. I had, low self-esteem, and I used to look for external validation a lot. And that for me really jeopardized the relationship I had with myself. And so through this journey, I've discovered that self-love is just simply about being kind to yourself. On days where you're finding it difficult to work or stay motivated or get out of bed, I would sort of push through that and make to-do lists and be productive as a way to show myself that I can get out of that state. But in actual fact, to just take it a step back and ask myself, why am I in this state? What is driving me to feel demotivated or to feel tired or emotionally exhausted? And that is, or was for me, the first step to being kind towards myself. So instead of channeling it in a way where I was forcing myself to do what I had been used to doing where working hard for me was a way in which I felt worthy, I took a step back and I realized that that might not be working for me anymore. And so I had to ask the questions. If I'm feeling this way, there must be a reason. And so that first step of kindness, by taking that step back and asking yourself the question, and then trying to see where you can help yourself instead of forcing yourself to do something that you've always been used to. That for me, self-love started with that kind of kindness, which then moved on to having more compassion with myself, being more patient with myself, and also being developing that self-respect and building up on my self-esteem.
Very powerful to come to that stage where you make a choice and you start your journey. And as you mentioned, when we lack self-love, self-respect, and that deep level of acceptance of the self, you know, we work so much harder, and also the punishment of the self, etc. Yes. Can you share your journey towards self-love, how the experience has been, the tools perhaps that you've been using towards self-love, and maybe the results of self-love?
So I think it's important that we backtrack a little bit because we are brought up in societies or we are conditioned to believe that love is supposed to be given outwardly and it's dependent on our partners or our children or our siblings. And yes, to some extent, love, yes, you need to give it outwards. But we were never really taught on the importance of loving ourselves. And I think that's where a lot of the younger generation, especially, are struggling because they are relying significantly on their relationships outwardly to empower them and give them the worth that they are looking for, or whatever they are lacking internally, they look for outside. And we were never really taught that it needs to come from you first. Whatever you are looking for outside, you should be able to give yourself first. Like they say, you can't fill from an empty cup. And so, through self love and using various tools and techniques, you are able to fill up your own cup. And the idea is that you fill it up so much that it spills over. And that is what you share to other people. And I recently read a quote that says, "The way you need love is the way you lacked love. And the way you give love is the way you were given love." And so the gap between the way you lacked love versus the way you were given love, I think that is where a lot of people are struggling. And that's where they are looking towards their relationships on the outside to fulfill them. And for me, I read the quote recently, but I think it was something that when I started this journey last year, I was it was actually triggered by the relationship that I had been in and at the time, where I had identified that it wasn't really love, but it was very attachment based. There was a lot of codependency, and there were things in the relationship that happened that led me to believe that I had lost myself. But for me, the relationship was just a trigger to what I had been thinking about and what I'd been feeling from childhood. And when I went on this journey after watching a lot of videos and podcasts, reading a lot of books on self love, a lot of the coaches and the psychologists will tell you that your lack of self love comes from something you lacked in your childhood. And that led me on to this journal journey of journaling where it was quite intensive, and I had a coach that I had been working with at the time who took me through my childhood experiences. And that's why I feel the topic for this Rise and Shine series is so apt, because you have to liberate yourself from ego, meaning you need to start from the basics. You need to humble yourself and ask yourself the difficult questions, which is what I had been assisted by with the coach. She had proposed various journal questions to me that took me beyond my daily journaling, writing about my day, what I went through. It took me through this whole inner child healing experience where I was able to identify what I lacked in my childhood, what might have went wrong that has led me to feel this way towards myself. And the second part of the series talks about healing emotions. And for me, once I had gone through those childhood experiences and relived them, not in a way where I had been placing myself in the situation and perhaps experiencing whatever trauma I had at the time, but rather looking at myself or reliving the experience from a detached perspective. And that was where the compassion came in. That was where the kindness came in, where I could look at myself as a child in that experience, if I was 5 or 10 years old, but give that child the love and compassion they needed at the time that they felt they lacked. So, through those techniques, that's where the healing of emotions came in for me. That's where I worked on forgiving myself, letting go of the difficulties that I had faced, things that I had been holding on to that I felt were, stirring up these negative feelings towards myself. That for me was a very powerful process towards this journey of self-love. And I've only been on this path for the last year or so. And prior to this, I mean, it's been 28 years of conditioning. So I can't say that I'm an expert, or I can't say that I'm now attained self-love. For me, it's an ongoing journey. The healing process is going to be there continuously. We're going to be faced with triggers on a constant basis. And it's about how we adapt, how aware we become of those triggers, and how we respond to them emotionally. And I think what also helped me, which has become quite popular nowadays, especially among relationships, is this aspect of love languages. We know about the 5 love languages, and the whole point of the love languages is to try and understand in a romantic relationship how your partner's love language is and how you should love them based on their love language. But we never stop to ask, what is our love language towards ourselves? How is it that we need to be loved? We do so much for other people, and that's where I think a lot of us get lost in relationships, is because we give and we prioritize other people's needs, assuming that that is what love is, because that's what we've been conditioned to believe, especially between parent-child relationships or with your partners. And so taking a step back to ask ourselves, first of all, what is our love language towards ourselves? If I can give you an example, my love language would be acts of service, meaning I I give a lot, I do a lot, and I would expect any relationship I get into, that person is going to do the same for me. But when I went through this journey of self-discovery, I realized that from my childhood, the acts of service was something that I got from my parents. It's what I modeled based on the relationship I'd seen them having. And I thought that was love. And yes, it does factor into love. But what I really think that I lacked after going through this journey in childhood was perhaps the emotional availability of my parents. And that for me translated into words of affirmation being the love language that I need to give to myself. So I had been giving a lot to myself in terms of acts of service, doing a lot for myself through the self-love journey, doing a lot of journaling, having, salt baths, cooking food that I enjoy. And it fulfilled me to a certain extent. But really the thing I lacked was those words of affirmation. Because I had been so harsh on myself, so critical on myself, I had to change that mindset and now be kind towards myself and give myself those kind, loving words. And it was when I realized that the love language I need, or the love that I lacked, was not necessarily what I had been giving to myself. It was what I had been giving to other people. So, with that awareness, I shifted that love and that energy inwardly. And I stopped giving so much of myself to other people, not in a selfish way, but I limited putting everyone else's needs above myself. At the time in the journey, I had been so depleted emotionally, spiritually, and there was nothing left to give to other people, let alone myself. So that was something I had realized, that I need to stop giving based on the little energy I have to other people. Instead, use that energy, turn it inwardly, and give myself the love that I need. And that's where I started growing as well. So it's been an ongoing process for me. I am still, in the self-love healing journey, and I probably will be there for a long time. But there's no challenge that I face that I haven't overcome. There's no difficulty that I perceive is life-threatening or is going to change my life for the worse. Everything that I've experienced and all the paths and the challenges that the universe has brought to me has really been a test towards showing me how much I can go into loving myself.
That's very powerful tools that you have shared and left us with, the self-love and, really this had, what did you say? Really having those, how I speak to myself, how I treat myself and value myself. It's so, so important, because sometimes we always putting others first and valuing others and respecting and doing a lot for others, but to put the self on the top of the list, I'm also learning that a lot, because that's so important with myself, the health issue that has come up that made me question myself and look at myself deeply and honestly and really, really value myself. And the other thing that I take from you is to revisit the childhood days and things, and to know that only I can give that love, and to also be able to clear out childhood issues and to work on the self, and know that only I am able to really heal myself and not to look for things on the outside. And lastly, as we are short of time, Simone, just how can we maintain self-love? It's as you mentioned, it's an ongoing process, but to really be able to maintain that self-love constantly.
I think it's important to check in with yourself regularly. So, when you have been in a relationship or you've lived your life needing that external validation, or you find your worth in other people or in relationships, anything that you are projecting outwards, it's something that we've been living with for a lifetime now. And really, to sustain that, you have to hold yourself accountable. Every morning when you wake up, do something nice for yourself, say something good to yourself. Um, have your affirmations in place if that's what works for you, or take little breaks throughout the day just to remind yourself that you're doing what you can. You are human, you have emotions, things are going to happen, but you have the power to overcome them. So having these mini check-ins throughout the day keeps you accountable, to make sure that you are being compassionate with yourself. Secondly, I find that meditation is very powerful. Whether you do it once a day or twice a day, it just reconditions and reprograms your brain in a way that brings stillness towards you. And I think many people that are struggling to love themselves, they are confused. There is a lot going on inside of them. They might be experiencing some sort of turmoil, and it's difficult for them to bring in that inner peace and inner silence. And through meditation, that's where you set aside time in the day to really go inwards and have that silence. And I think it's through that silence and peace that you establish that relationship with yourself, which helps in your self-love growth and development. I also think journaling is quite important. I used to journal every day, but it became a task for me because it was more out of habit, where I was just journaling about my day. And so I decided to journal at least once a week instead, where the quality of my journaling was not just about my day, but about my emotions, my moods, my feelings that I had for that week. And so I'd go back and read, the week prior, how I'd been feeling and thinking. And then if it was a difficult week for me and it was challenging and I maybe wasn't so compassionate with myself, I make that extra effort the following week to be compassionate with myself. I also think having boundaries in place, boundaries to maintain your self-respect, especially if you find yourself giving all the time, prioritizing other people's needs, being harsh with yourself. Have those boundaries in place where you kind of need to reparent yourself in a way that you hold yourself accountable to say, okay, today I'm only going to say kind words to myself. Or if someone says something harsh towards me, I'm not going to retaliate. I'm not going to internalize that. I'm just going to let it go because I understand they might be in a mood today. So having those boundaries in place, make sure that you are within the new guidelines that you are setting for yourself, that you are not going to accept anything less than for that particular day. And really, self-love is taking it one step at a time, one day at a time. We can't learn to self-love in one day, let alone 1 year, 2 years. It's that ongoing process where you are going to have difficult days. Some days are going to be challenging for you. It doesn't matter what you're faced with, whether it's work or relationships or children. Things are going to come. There's no life that's going to be perfect once you've experienced the self-love. But I think it's also how you approach situations and having that awareness of what is this doing for me as opposed to why is this happening to me also help me in this healing journey and this self-love journey. So yeah, those are the things that I use to sustain myself. And also little things, like changing your bed sheets. I find that so comforting, or soaking in a nice hot bath, or having a nice warm cup of tea. Little things that will get you into that appreciation for yourself and appreciation for the little things that also increases the love vibration that you feel around you.
So powerful. I myself have taken so much from this session, and really thank you for sharing from the heart and what's working for you at the moment. Much, much appreciated. I think there's something on the chat. Greetings of peace. What happens when a self-love act of not pushing yourself on a particular day clashes with your deadlines at work?
Okay, so I've been faced with something
Nasika.
similar.
Yes.
Thank you for that question. You know, practicing self-love, eventually it should be something that happens on constant, on a daily basis, every day, every second. But to get there is a bit of a challenge. And so when faced with these deadlines, it does make it tricky. But for me, what I do is I set aside time, either before work or after work, knowing that, you know, the day is going to be hectic. I really put aside that time, even if it's 10 minutes, where it's quality time that I dedicate to myself. I don't think of work. I try and avoid any type of doing of anything. I either meditate, I sit in silence, and I just breathe, and I pep talk. You know, I give myself a pep talk and I say, if it's the morning, today is going to be a tough day. You have deadlines to meet. There's potential for you to get frazzled or experience anxiety and lash out. You are aware of how you act in those situations, but remember that it is not conducive to your journey towards self love. If you feel that way, take a 5-minute break, go outside. You know, there's little practical things that you can implement if you feel like the day is getting ahead of you and you might be reverting to old habits. So it's just that awareness in the moment. And you know, these things come to test us. There will be days when we faced with these deadlines. There will be challenges in relationships. And we can't get away from it. But that's where the power comes in. That's where you can test yourself to say, I've worked on myself thus far. These are my affirmations. This is how I aim to sustain myself. So I'm not going to let this one challenge take me back 10 steps. And that's where the holding yourself accountable and having your boundaries in place become important.
Thank you very, very much, Simone. Really, I think it was very inspiring, but everyone must have taken great benefit from your journey of self-love. Very powerful, practical tools, and a message from Kumari Pillay. Many thanks for the tools you shared, Semona. Much appreciated. And have a great day. Many blessings for your journey of self-love. I know you're a powerful individual, powerful Shakti. You've been through the journey a lot, and I've really taken great inspirations from your journey, many years as well. Take care. Beautiful
Thank you, Sister
share.
Shelley. Thanks
Take
to
care.
everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wow.